There's no such thing as sight reading. C Ionian. C Ionian is one way to play the C major scale. When you are playing melodic material, representative of C Ionian, you are playing key of C, no sharps, no flats, in a way that leads your ear to hear C as the root and C major as the underlying harmony. A C Ionian's job is not to start on C. A C Ionian's job is to sound like a C major or one chord in the key of C. There is other contextual material that can be provided that will lead your ear to hear C as the root and C major as the harmony, other than the starting note. Just like a C major chord doesn't have to have C in the bass, but C still remains the root. Same is true of C Ionian. C doesn't have to be the starting note, right? And so D Dorian, when you're playing D Dorian, you're still in the key of C. It's still no sharps, no flats, but now you're playing melodic material in the key of C in a way with surrounding context that leads your ear to hear D minor, the 2 chord is the underlying harmony, to hear D, the note D, as the root. And just like a D minor chord doesn't have to have D in the bass, a D Dorian scale doesn't have to have D in the bass either. D doesn't have to be the starting note as long as there's some other material that leads your ear to hear the D as the root instead of the tonic note C. C's still the tonic, we're still in the key of C, right? E Phrygian. E Phrygian is another way of playing C major, but now we're playing C major and there is some surrounding context that is leading your ear to hear E as the root instead of C, and to hear E minor flat 9 as the underlying harmony instead of C major. And there's lots of things that you can do to it to lead your ear to hear that same root. We're still in the key of C, C's still the tonic. There's some context that is making E sound like the root to you now. F Lydian, just another way of playing the key of C. An F Lydian's job is to provide melodic material that sounds like the harmony, the 4 harmony, the F major harmony, which is one of the chords that's in the key of C. So if you play the C scale, the melodic material in the key of C, no sharps, no flats, in a way that leads your ear to hear F as the root and F major as the underlying harmony, well then that melodic material is going to have a Lydian sound. G makes a Lydian, just another way of playing the key of C. But now we're playing the key of C, melodic material in the key of C, that with context that leads your ear to hear G as the root and leads your ear to hear G7 as the underlying harmony. A G7 chord doesn't have to have G in the bass. G remains the root. A G makes a Lydian scale doesn't have to start on G as long as there's some other context that leads your ear to hear the G as the root instead of the tonic note C, which is still the tonic of the key. Aeolian. When you're playing melodic material in Aeolian, Aeolian is the melodic presentation of a 6 chord in the key of C, the A minor chord, right? The A minor chord is the harmonic presentation of an Aeolian, and an Aeolian is the melodic presentation of an A minor. And if you're playing in the key of C and there's context that makes your melodic material sound like A is the root and A minor is the underlying harmony, well then that's going to sound like Aeolian. It doesn't have to start on A. B Locrian. Just another way of playing the C scale. Still no sharps, no flats, except now you're playing melodic material in the key of C, but there's some surrounding context that leads your ear to hear B as the root instead of the tonic C, and leads your ear to hear B half diminished as the underlying harmony. There are other things you can do to the key of C to create that impression with your ear that C is not the root, that B's the root now, and the underlying harmony is a B half diminished. A B Locrian's job is to sound like the 7 chord B half diminished, and a B half 7 chord in the key of C is the harmonic presentation of a B Locrian. They're the same sound. One is a harmony, one is a melody. Now, There's lots of things that can happen contextually within the key of C that will draw your ear to one of those other notes of the scale as being the root, other than the starting note. The starting note isn't the best way to do it. You can provide rhythmic material that causes the underlying notes of the harmony to fall on the downbeat. That'll draw your ear to hear that harmony. You can have material before or material after that creates that resolution. Like if you have secondary dominant material in the bar preceding your mode, right? Then that's going to lead your ear to hear a new tonic. You can add chromatic passing tones between the notes to cause the notes of the harmony to fall on the downbeat. You can have a harmony playing in the background. See, that's the thing about music. It's always contextual, right? When this melodic and harmonic material happens in music, there's something that happens before it, and there's going to be something that happens after it, and there's going to be things happening at the same time. And if that surrounding context leads you to hear one of the other notes of the scale in your melodic line, leads you to hear one of the other notes of the scale as the root, then that melodic line is operating within that mode. The starting note is irrelevant. So the idea that a mode is just a scale starting a different note is the most basic and remedial understanding of a mode. And as you become more advanced, you realize that that's not actually true anymore. That if there's melodic material with surrounding context that leads your ear to hear a root other than the tonic of the key, and there's lots of ways to do that, then the starting note is irrelevant. And so just like harmonies don't have to have the root and the bass, a harmony, there's inversions. You don't have to have the root remains the root, but it doesn't have to be the starting note, doesn't have to be the bass note. Harmonies have inversions. Well, modes have inversions too. My name is Mark Dooley. I've been a private music teacher for 37 years, focused on practical theory and music literacy. If you'd like to hear more, follow me. If you'd like lessons, contact me. If you can learn how to read words, you can learn how to read music.